The stars had never seemed so far away until Commander Park Dae-ho watched them through the small window of the ship called Harmony. 200 years his people had traveled through the cold darkness of space. 200 years since Earth had sent its children to find new homes among the stars. Now, finally, they had found something more than empty worlds and silent suns. They had found others. The Confederation ships hung in space like massive cities made of metal and light. Each one was bigger than anything humans had ever built. They moved without sound, without the rough shaking that human ships made when they pushed through space. Park Dae-ho had seen the recordings 100 times, but seeing them with his own eyes made his stomach feel tight. "They are waiting for us," said Dr. Kim Sora, standing beside him at the window. She was the smartest person on the ship when it came to understanding other kinds of life. Her job was to figure out how these aliens thought and lived. "The message said they want to talk." Park Dae-ho nodded. The message had come in perfect human language, which should have made him feel better. Instead, it made him worry. How did they learn to speak like humans so fast? How long had they been watching? Captain Lee Woo-bin walked up behind them. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. "The weapons team says their ships could turn us into dust without trying very hard," he said quietly. "But they have not pointed any guns at us yet." "Maybe they do not see us as a threat," Park Dae-ho said. Lee Woo-bin made a small laugh that did not sound happy. "Look at our ship, then look at theirs. Of course they do not see us as a threat." Ambassador Yoon Nari joined them at the window. She would do most of the talking when they met the aliens. Her job was to make sure humans did not say or do anything that would make the aliens angry. "The Confederation has rules for meeting new species," she said. "They have done this many times before." "That should make us feel better," Park Dae-ho said. "But it does not." "No," Yoon Nari agreed. "It does not." The meeting happened on a station that floated between the human ship and the alien fleet. It was bigger than most human cities. The walls were made of something that looked like white stone but felt warm when touched. The air smelled clean, like rain on Earth. The aliens were nothing like humans had imagined. High Counselor Nethys looked like a walking mountain made of blue crystal. Light moved inside its body like slow lightning. When it spoke, the words came from everywhere and nowhere, filling the air around them. "Welcome, small ones," it said. "We are pleased to meet another thinking species." War Marshal Keth was different. It stood on 4 legs thick as tree trunks. Its skin was black and covered in scars. 2 long arms ended in hands that could crush a human head without effort. Its voice was deep and rough like rocks falling down a mountain. "Humans," it said, tasting the word. "Soft creatures from a young world." Prime Calculator Axiom 7 was the strangest of all. It had no body that could be seen. Instead, lights and numbers moved in the air where it should have been. When it spoke, the words appeared as symbols that somehow meant sounds. "Your species shows basic intelligence," the symbols said. "But your thinking is slow and full of errors." Park Dae-ho felt anger start to grow in his chest, but he kept his face calm. These aliens talked about humans like they were children or pets. But he was here to learn, not to fight. "We are honored to meet the Confederation," Yoon Nari said, using the words she had practiced for months. "Humans wish to live in peace with all thinking beings." High Counselor Nethys made sounds like wind chimes in a soft breeze. Dr. Kim Sora had studied alien behavior and said this meant the crystal being was amused. "Peace is good," Nethys said. "The Confederation values peace. That is why we have rules." "Rules?" Park Dae-ho asked. "New species must prove they can think and work with others," War Marshal Keth explained. "Most new species are given small jobs to do. Easy work, safe work." "We have prepared living space for your kind," Prime Calculator Axiom 7 added. "Resource Sector 12 Gamma has worlds that should suit your needs." Dr. Kim Sora knew enough about the Confederation to understand what this meant. She looked at Park Dae-ho with worried eyes. Resource Sector 12 Gamma was where the Confederation put species they did not think were very smart or useful. It was far from the important worlds, far from the centers of power and learning. "We are grateful for any worlds you can offer," Yoon, Nari said carefully. Of course you are, War Marshal Keth said. Your ships are slow, and your weapons are simple. You should be happy we are giving you anything at all. Captain Lee Woo-bin's hands closed into fists, but he said nothing. Park Dae-ho put a gentle hand on his arm. Getting angry would not help anyone. The meeting went on for hours. The aliens asked many questions about human history, human technology, and human ways of living. They seemed most interested in how humans fought wars and made decisions. Every answer made them look more amused or bored. Your species uses emotion to make choices, High Counselor Nethys observed. This is inefficient. You form groups based on friendship and loyalty, War Marshal Keth added. This makes you weak in battle. Your science advances slowly because you argue about right and wrong, Prime Calculator Axiom 7 concluded. Logic alone should guide progress. Dr. Kim So-ra took notes on everything. She watched how each alien moved and spoke. She paid attention to what they cared about and what they ignored. Her job was to understand these beings, and understanding meant watching and listening more than talking. When the meeting ended, the humans were given star charts showing their new territory. The worlds in Resource Sector 12 Gamma were small and poor. Most had been used up by other species and then abandoned. But they were theirs. We will send ships to check on your progress, High Counselor Nethys said. The Confederation likes to help new species learn and grow. How kind, Yoon-Nari said, but her smile was tight. Back on the Harmony, the four humans sat around a small table in Park Dae-ho's quarters. No one spoke for a long time. They think we are stupid, Captain Lee Woo-bin said finally. They think we are harmless, Dr. Kim So-ra corrected. That might be useful. Useful how? Park Dae-ho asked. They told us a lot today without meaning to, she said. They told us how they think, what they value, and what they fear. She looked at her notes. High Counselor Nethys cares most about control and order. War Marshal Keth respects only strength and victory. Prime Calculator Axiom 7 believes only in logic and efficiency. And, Yoon-Nari asked, and they all think emotions make a species weak, Dr. Kim So-ra said. They do not understand that emotions can make a species stronger. They do not understand cooperation, sacrifice, or love. These things confuse them. Park Dae-ho leaned back in his chair. So we know something about them that they do not know about us. We know many things about them that they do not know about us, Dr. Kim So-ra said quietly. The question is what we do with that knowledge. Captain Lee Woo-bin looked out the small window at the Confederation fleet. We learn, he said. We watch. We listen. And we remember everything. Yes, Park Dae-ho agreed. We remember everything. The next morning, human ships began the long journey to Resource Sector 12 Gamma. As they traveled, Dr. Kim So-ra continued working on her reports. She wrote down every detail about the aliens they had met. She made notes about their technology, their behavior, and their weaknesses. One entry in her private journal was different from the others. She wrote it in code that only other humans would understand. They think in decades, she wrote. We think in millennia. The Confederation had given humans the worst worlds in the galaxy. They had treated them like children who needed to be watched and guided. They had made it clear that humans were at the bottom of a very tall ladder. What the Confederation did not know was that humans were very good at climbing ladders. They were even better at building new ones. The journey to their new home would take months. During that time, human engineers would study every piece of alien technology they had seen. Human scientists would analyze the alien behaviors and social structures. Human strategists would plan for a future the Confederation could not imagine. The aliens had made one very big mistake. They had assumed that being underestimated was a weakness. For humans, it was the greatest strength of all. Park Dae-ho stood at his window and watched the stars grow closer. Somewhere among those lights were worlds that would become human homes. Somewhere in the darkness was a future that would surprise everyone. The Confederation had been very clear about one thing. They had rules for new species. They had done this many times before. What they did not know was that humans had rules, too. And human rules were about to change everything. 50 years had passed since the first humans met the Confederation. 50 years of living in the shadow of giants, learning their ways, and building something new in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. Director Cho Min-ho had been born on the journey to Resource Sector 12 Gamma. His father had been one of the original colonists, and his mother had been a ship engineer. He had never seen Earth, but he had heard the stories. More importantly, he had grown up watching the aliens. Now he stood in a room deep under the surface of New Sol, the largest human colony world. The room had no windows and thick walls that blocked all signals from getting in or out. Around a metal table sat the most important humans in the galaxy, though the Confederation did not know these people existed. "Report," Cho Min-ho said simply. General Han Ji-woo was the first to speak. She commanded all human military forces. Though officially humans had no military forces, the Confederation thought humans were too peaceful to have armies. "Our shipbuilding programs are ahead of schedule," she said. "We now have 3,000 vessels in active service. Confederation records show humans operating 47 ships," Professor Kang Hye-jin added. She was the expert on alien civilizations and spent her time studying how the Confederation worked. "They count only the ships they can see." Engineer Park Jun-seo smiled at this. He was responsible for human technology, and he had spent decades taking apart alien machines and making them better. "The new stealth systems work perfectly," he said. "Our ships can travel anywhere in Confederation space without being detected." Cho Min-ho nodded. This was good news, but not surprising. Humans had always been good at staying hidden when they needed to. "What about the current situation?" Professor Kang Hye-jin's face became serious. "The Vorthak Empire and the Zalani Collective have been moving ships toward their border for 6 months. Both sides are preparing for war." "How bad will it be?" General Han Ji-woo asked. "Bad," Professor Kang Hye-jin said. "The Vorthak have been looking for an excuse to attack the Zalani for 20 years. The Zalani are proud and will not back down. When the fighting starts, billions will die." "And the Confederation?" Cho Min-ho asked. "They will try to stop it, but they are too slow and too careful," Professor Kang Hye-jin explained. "By the time they decide what to do, half the galaxy will be burning." Engineer Park Jun-seo leaned forward. "We could stop it." The room became very quiet. This was the question they had all been thinking about, but no one had said out loud. "Explain," Cho Min-ho said. "We know both the Vorthak and the Zalani better than they know themselves," Park Jun-seo said. "We have been watching them for 50 years. We know what they want, what they fear, and what they need. We also know the Confederation leaders," General Han Ji-woo added. "We know how they think and how they make decisions. But if we act, we reveal ourselves," Professor Kang Hye-jin warned. "Right now, the Confederation sees us as harmless observers. If they learn what we really are—" "What are we really?" Cho Min-ho asked quietly. No one answered for a long moment. "We are the species that has been mapping every star system, every trade route, and every military base in Confederation space," General Han Ji-woo said finally. "We are the species that has detailed psychological profiles of every major leader in the galaxy," Professor Kang Hye-jin added. "We are the species that has technology 50 years ahead of anyone else," Engineer Park Jun-seo said. "We are the species that could have conquered the Confederation any time in the last 20 years, Cho Min-ho concluded, but chose not to. The truth hung in the air between them. Humans were not the harmless primitives the Confederation believed them to be. They had not spent 50 years learning to fit in. They had spent 50 years learning to control everything. "The war starts in 3 days," Professor Kang Hye-jin said. "The Vorthak will attack the Zalani colony at Beta Centauri. The Zalani will respond by destroying 2 Vorthak mining worlds. After that, it spreads." "Unless?" Cho Min-ho asked. "Unless someone stops it before it starts," she said. Cho Min-ho stood up and walked to the wall. On it was a map of the galaxy with thousands of colored lights. Blue lights showed human settlements. Red lights showed areas of conflict. Green lights showed peaceful Confederation worlds. There were far more blue lights than the Confederation knew about. "Send a message to the Confederation Council," he said. "Tell them humanity offers to mediate the dispute between the Vorthak and the Zalani." "They will laugh," General Han Ji-woo said. "They will say humans do not understand galactic politics," Professor Kang Hye-jin agreed. Good, Cho Min-ho said. Let them think that. 3 days later, the galaxy held its breath. Vorthak War fleets sat at the edge of Zalani space. Zalani battle groups prepared to fight and die. Confederation peacekeeping forces rushed toward the conflict zone, but they would arrive too late. Then the humans arrived. Not one ship or 10 ships, but 300 human vessels that appeared from empty space. They moved between the two fleets like they belonged there. The Vorthak and Zalani commanders were so surprised they forgot to shoot. The human fleet was led by a ship called Harmony II, named for the vessel that had brought the first humans to meet the Confederation. On board was Ambassador Yoon Nari, now an old woman, but still the best human diplomat in the galaxy. She sent the same message to both fleets. Please do not start this war. Let us talk first. War Marshal Keth, now the supreme commander of all Vorthak forces, was angry and confused. Humans have no authority here, he broadcast to both fleets. This is not your concern. All life is our concern, Yoon Nari replied calmly. High Admiral Vex of the Zalani Collective was equally angry. Your species knows nothing of honor or conflict. Go back to your small worlds and leave this to real warriors. We know more about both than you might think, Yoon Nari said. What happened next surprised everyone, including some of the humans. Yoon Nari did not argue with the fleet commanders. She did not make threats or promises. Instead, she began talking about something completely different. She talked about the mining rights on a world called Kepler 442b. She mentioned trade agreements that had been signed 30 years ago. She brought up old debts and older favors. To the Vorthak and Zalani, it sounded like meaningless human chatter. To the Confederation observers, it sounded like a primitive species trying to understand complex politics. But Professor Kang Hye-jin was listening from the human command ship, and she was smiling. Every word Yoon Nari spoke was carefully chosen. Every detail she mentioned was a piece of a larger picture that only humans could see. Yoon Nari was not just talking about trade and treaties. She was showing both sides that humans knew everything. They knew about secret military bases that were supposed to be hidden. They knew about private deals between leaders who thought no one was watching. They knew about family connections and personal grudges and hidden fears. Most importantly, they knew exactly what each side really wanted from this war and why neither side would get it. The Vorthak want the crystal mines on Zalani 7, Yoon Nari said to War Marshal Keth. But the mines will be destroyed in the first day of fighting. The Zalani want to prove they are strong enough to stand against the Vorthak Empire. But losing half their fleet will prove the opposite. How do you know about the crystal mines? War Marshal Keth demanded. That information is classified at the highest levels. We know because we pay attention, Yoon Nari said simply. Then she made an offer that no one expected. Humans will give the Vorthak exclusive mining rights to 12 crystal-rich worlds in our territory, she said. These worlds have more crystals than Zalani 7 and are easier to reach. War Marshal Keth was suspicious. Why would humans give us such valuable worlds? Because we do not need them, Yoon Nari replied. Humans do not use crystal technology the way you do. This was true, but not for the reason the Vorthak thought. Humans had developed different technology that worked better than crystals, but there was no need to explain that. And what do you offer the Zalani? High Admiral Vex asked. Recognition, Yoon Nari said. The Confederation will formally acknowledge the Zalani Collective as a major power with a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. High Admiral Vex was quiet for a long moment. The Zalani had wanted this recognition for over a century. It was worth more than any military victory. How can humans promise such things? He asked finally. Because the Confederation trusts us, Yoon Nari said. We are neutral. We are peaceful. We have no hidden agenda. This was also true, but again, not for the reason anyone thought. Humans had no hidden agenda because their agenda was completely open. They wanted peace, stability, and the chance to keep learning and growing. The fact that this agenda required them to secretly manage the entire galaxy was just a detail. To be a war that was supposed to last years ended before it began. The Vorthak got their crystal worlds. The Zalani got their recognition. The Confederation got peace and stability, and humans got something more valuable than any of these things. They got respect. How did they do it? High Counselor Nethys asked Prime Calculator Axiom 7 after the crisis was over. Humans ended a galactic war in 3 days. We have been trying to prevent this conflict for 2 years. Unknown, Prime Calculator Axiom 7 replied. Human methods do not follow logical patterns. They use information in ways that should not work. 25 years after the humans prevented the Great War, the galaxy was at peace. Trade flowed freely between worlds. Art and science flourished. Children of a dozen species grew up knowing only prosperity and safety. The Confederation leaders congratulated themselves on creating such a stable civilization. They did not know that stability had a price, and humans were the ones paying it. President Im Da-un stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, above New Seoul. At 90 years old, she was one of the last humans who remembered the early days when her people were still pretending to be primitive. Now she led a civilization that spanned half the galaxy, though most of the galaxy did not. No, it existed. The deep space sensors are picking up something, Admiral Song Hyun-woo said as he joined her at the massive windows. He was her military commander, responsible for fleets that officially did not exist. Something big, coming from dark space. How big? President Im Da-un asked. Big enough to eat stars, Admiral Song Hyun-woo replied. Dr. Ryu Soo-jin approached them, carrying a datapad filled with readings that made no sense. She was the director of applied sciences, which meant she was responsible for technology that was officially impossible. The signals are unlike anything we have seen before, she said. The entities seem to be made of living crystal, but they operate on quantum frequencies that should not be possible. Entities? President Im Da-un asked. The devourer swarms, Dr. Ryu Soo-jin said quietly. That is what our computers are calling them. They consume matter and energy to fuel their growth. Planets, stars, entire solar systems. Admiral Song Hyun-woo felt his stomach tighten. How long do we have? They will reach the outer rim of Confederation space in 6 months, Dr. Ryu Soo-jin said. The core worlds in 18 months. After that... She did not finish the sentence. President Im Da-un turned away from the window. At her age, she had thought the hardest decisions were behind her. She had been wrong. Has the Confederation detected them yet? No, Admiral Song Hyun-woo said. Their sensors are not sensitive enough. They will not know about the threat until the Devourers are already destroying their worlds. And when they do know? Dr. Ryu Soo-jin looked at her datapad again. Their weapons will not work. The Devourers exist partially outside normal space-time. Traditional energy weapons pass right through them. Kinetic weapons are absorbed and used to fuel their growth. But we have weapons that will work, President Im Da-un said. It was not a question. Yes, Dr. Ryu Soo-jin confirmed. We have been developing quantum disruption technology for 30 years. We can break the Devourer's connection to their pocket, dimension, and force them back into normal space where they can be destroyed. Why have we been developing weapons for an enemy we just discovered? Admiral Song Hyun-woo asked. President Im Da-un smiled sadly. Because we have been preparing for this exact scenario for 75 years. The truth was, something no other species would have understood. Humans did not just study the galaxy and its civilizations. They studied the dark spaces between galaxies. They sent ships to places where no sane species would go, looking for threats that might someday come calling. They had found many such threats. The Devourer swarms were just the largest and most immediate. How many ships will we need? President Im Da-un asked. All of them, Admiral Song Hyun-woo said simply. Captain Oh Tae-young was in charge of special operations, which meant he handled the jobs that were too sensitive for regular military units. He had been listening to the conversation from across the room, and now he stepped forward. The Confederation will want to know where our ships came from, he said. They think humans have 50 vessels at most. When we show up with thousands, they will ask questions. Let them ask, President Im Da-un said. By the time this is over, hiding will no longer be possible anyway. 6 months later, the Devourer swarms reached the edge of Confederation space. The first to die were the remote monitoring stations that watched for threats from outside the galaxy. They simply vanished, consumed so completely that not even debris remained. The second to die were the patrol fleets sent to investigate. Brave crews from a dozen species flew into dark space and never returned. Their final transmissions spoke of creatures made of living crystal and shadow. beautiful and terrible beyond description. The third to die were entire worlds. The planet Zarian Prime had been home to 8 billion Zilani. It was a center of learning and culture, famous throughout the galaxy for its universities and art galleries. The Devourers reached it on a Tuesday morning, local time. The planet lasted 14 hours. High Counselor Nethys called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from every major species gathered in the Great Hall on Confederation Central, their faces filled with fear and confusion. "We are facing an extinction-level threat," Nethys announced, its crystal body flickering with stressed light patterns. "Our greatest scientists cannot understand these creatures. Our most powerful weapons cannot harm them." War Marshal Keth stood on his 4 powerful legs, but for the first time in his long life, he looked uncertain. "The Vorthak Empire has lost 12 worlds in 3 days, he reported. "Our battle fleets cannot even slow these things down." Prime Calculator Axiom 7 displayed probability calculations that painted a picture of complete galactic destruction within 2 years. "All scenarios result in total ecosystem collapse," the digital being announced. "Survival probability for any known species, 0. "Except for one," a quiet voice said from the back of the hall. Every head turned to see Ambassador Yunari walking slowly toward the center of the room. She was very old now, her hair white and her steps careful, but her eyes were still sharp and clear. "Humans," she said simply. "Humans might survive." "Impossible," Prime Calculator Axiom 7 responded immediately. "Human technology is insufficient for this threat." "You might be surprised," Yunari said. High Counselor Nethys leaned forward, its crystal form brightening with interest. "Do humans have weapons that could work against these creatures?" "We might," Yunari said carefully. "Might?" War Marshal Keth demanded. "The galaxy is dying and you say might?" Yunari looked around the room at the gathered representatives. These beings had spent a century treating humans like primitive children. They had given humanity the worst worlds, the smallest roles, and the least respect. Now they needed humanity's help to survive. "Humans have been preparing for this possibility for a long time," she said. "What possibility?" High Counselor Nethys asked. "The possibility that something would come from outside the galaxy and try to destroy everything we have built," Yunari replied. "We have been watching the dark spaces. We have been developing countermeasures." "How long have you been preparing?" Prime Calculator Axiom 7 asked. "Since the day we joined the Confederation," Yunari said. The room erupted in confusion and angry voices. Representatives demanded to know why humans had hidden such preparations. They wanted to see the weapons and ships immediately. They accused humans of planning to abandon the Confederation when danger came. Yunari waited for the noise to die down. Then she spoke again, and her voice carried clearly to every corner of the Great Hall. "We will help," she said. "But there is a price." "Name it," High Counselor Nethys said immediately. "Complete operational authority," Yunari replied. "Human ships, human commanders, human strategy. No interference, no second-guessing, no political committees. You asked for our help. This is how we give it." War Marshal Keth bristled at this. "You expect the galaxy's greatest military leaders to take orders from a species that has never fought a real war?" Yunari smiled, and for the first time in years, it was not a diplomatic smile. It was the smile of someone who knew secrets that would terrify everyone in the room. "We have been fighting real wars for a century," she said. "You just never noticed." 3 days later, the human fleet arrived. It emerged from quantum fold space like a tide of silver stars. Ship after ship after ship, each one sleek and deadly, and completely unknown to Confederation records. They moved in perfect formation, responding to commands faster than thought, armed with weapons that bent space and time. Admiral Song Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the flagship New Earth, watching the Confederation observers record everything. Their shock was visible even across species barriers. "How many ships?" Captain Oh Tae-young asked from his position at the tactical station. 12,000 in the first wave," Admiral Song Hyun-woo replied. 8,000 more in reserve. And the Confederation thinks humans have 47 vessels according to their latest count, Admiral Song Hyun-woo said. They are about to learn that humans are very good at not being counted. The first battle took place at the Kepler system, where a devourer swarm was consuming the local star. Human ships moved into attack position using tactics no other species had ever seen. They did not try to overwhelm the enemy with superior numbers or firepower. Instead, they used precision, timing, and technology that worked on principles the Confederation did not understand. The quantum disruption weapons fired once. The devourer swarm, which had been untouchable and unstoppable, suddenly became very touchable and very stoppable. Forced back into normal space-time, the crystal entities found themselves vulnerable to conventional weapons for the first time. 10 years had passed since the Devourer War, and the galaxy had never been more peaceful. Trade routes flowed like rivers of prosperity. Scientific discoveries happened at a rate that amazed everyone. Wars had become so rare that some species were starting to forget how to fight them. The Confederation leaders told themselves this was the natural result of their wise leadership. But late at night, in private meetings, they whispered about the real reason for their golden age. Humans. Council. Chairman Bae Dongmin sat in his office deep beneath the surface of New Seoul, reading reports that would have terrified most sapient beings. The reports came from Director Nam Yoon-soo, who managed something called transition operations. The name was deliberately vague, but the work was very specific. Transition operations was the department that had been slowly and carefully guiding galactic civilization for the past decade. Every major trade agreement, every scientific breakthrough, every political decision that mattered had been influenced by human advisors working behind the scenes. The Zalani Collective wants to declare war on the Thraxian Republic, Director Nam Yoon-soo reported, sitting across from Chairman Bae Dongmin. A Thraxian trade ship accidentally destroyed a Zalani religious monument while delivering medical supplies. Accidentally? Chairman Bae Dongmin asked. The pilot was drunk and thought the monument was a landing beacon, Director Nam Yoon-soo said with a slight smile. Not exactly a reason to start a war. What did our people do? Commander Ko Young-mi had a quiet conversation with High Admiral Vex, Director Nam Yoon-soo explained. She reminded him that the Thraxians had donated those medical supplies for free, and that starting a war over an accident would make the Zalani look foolish to other species. Chairman Bae Dongmin nodded. And High Admiral Vex decided that executing the drunk pilot and accepting formal apologies would be sufficient justice, Director Nam Yoon-soo said. The Thraxians agreed immediately. Crisis resolved. This was how things worked now. Small problems were solved before they became big problems. Big problems were solved before they became galactic catastrophes. And somehow it always seemed like the aliens had thought of the solutions themselves. Dr. Sim, Wonho wants to see you, Director Nam Yoon-soo said, changing the subject. She says her new research is ready. Dr. Sim Wonho was the head of xenopsychology studies, which meant she spent her time figuring out how alien minds worked. Her research had been essential to humanity's success in managing galactic affairs. Understanding how other species thought was the key to predicting how they would act. When she arrived at Chairman Bae Dongmin's office, she carried a thick folder and a worried expression. I have been studying the psychological effects of the post-war period on Confederation species, she said without introduction. The results are concerning. How concerning? Chairman Bae Dongmin asked. They are starting to understand what we are, Dr. Sim Wonho said simply. She opened her folder and spread out charts and graphs across the desk. The data showed behavioral patterns from dozens of species over the past 10 years. Look at this pattern, she said, pointing to a chart, showing Vorthak military decisions. 10 years ago, War Marshal Keth made choices based on aggression and pride. Now his decisions are more balanced, more thoughtful. He considers long-term consequences instead of just immediate gains. That sounds like a good thing, Director, Nam Yoon-soo said. It is, Dr. Sim Wonho agreed. But he did not change because he wanted to. He changed because our people have been subtly influencing his advisors for a decade. The problem is that he is starting to notice. She showed them another chart, this one tracking High Counselor Nethys's decision-making process. The same pattern appears everywhere. Alien leaders are making better choices, but they are not sure why. They are starting to feel like something, is guiding their thoughts. Chairman Bae Dong-min leaned back in his chair. And that makes them uncomfortable. More than uncomfortable, Dr. Sim Won-ho said. It makes them scared. They are beginning to suspect that their free will is an illusion. Is it? Director Nam Yoon-soo asked quietly. The question hung in the air for a long moment. Chairman Bae Dong-min had wondered about this himself. How much choice did the aliens really have when humans were always there to suggest the right answer? We do not force them to do anything, Dr. Sim Won-ho said finally. We just make sure they have all the information they need to make good decisions. And if they have that information, they naturally make the choices we want them to make, Director Nam Yoon-soo said, because we understand them well enough to predict their responses. Yes, Dr. Sim Won-ho said, which means we are not controlling them directly, but we are controlling the environment in which they make their choices. Chairman Bae Dong-min stood up and walked to the window that looked out over New Seoul. The city was beautiful and peaceful, full of humans who had been born among the stars and never known war or want. This was what they had built by carefully managing the galaxy. What does your research recommend? He asked. We have 3 options, Dr. Sim Won-ho said. First, we can pull back and let the aliens make their own mistakes. The galaxy will become more chaotic, but at least they will feel free. Second option, we can reveal ourselves completely and take direct control, she said. End the pretense and openly govern galactic civilization. And the third option? Dr. Sim Won-ho looked troubled. We can prepare to leave. The words hit Chairman Bae Dong-min like a physical blow. Leave? After everything they had built? After all the work they had done to create a peaceful galaxy? Explain, he said. The aliens are not children, Dr. Sim Won-ho said. They are intelligent beings with their own desires and dreams. If they learn that we have been managing their lives without their knowledge, they will rebel. Not because they hate peace and prosperity, but because they need to feel like their choices matter. Even if their choices lead to war and suffering? Director Nam Yoon-soo asked. Even then, Dr. Sim Won-ho confirmed. Freedom is more important to most sapient species than safety. They would rather make their own mistakes than live perfect lives designed by someone else. Chairman Bae Dong-min returned to his desk and sat down heavily. He was 68 years old and had spent his entire adult life working to create a better galaxy. The idea of walking away from it all seemed impossible. How long do we have? He asked. The Confederation Council is meeting next week to discuss what they call the human question, Dr. Sim Won-ho said. They have been comparing notes about human involvement in galactic affairs. They are starting to see the pattern. What pattern? Humans always know the right thing to do, she said. Humans always have the perfect solution to every problem. Humans never make mistakes that cause serious damage to anyone. Director Nam Yoon-soo frowned. That does not sound suspicious. That sounds helpful. It sounds impossible, Dr. Sim Won-ho corrected. No species is that good at everything. No species is that wise and careful and perfectly informed, unless they have been studying everyone else for over a century. Chairman Bae Dong-min finished. 3 days later, Commander Ko Young-mi returned from a meeting with Confederation intelligence officers. Her report confirmed Dr. Sim Won-ho's fears. They know, she said simply. Not everything, but enough. They know we have more ships than we have admitted. They know our technology is more advanced than we have shown. They know we have been involved in every major galactic event for the past 50 years. What do they think we are? Chairman Bae Dong-min asked. They think we are the apex species, Commander Ko Young-mi said. They think we have evolved beyond the need for conquest or dominance, and that we have been managing galactic civilization like gardeners tending a garden. That is exactly what we are, Director Nam Yoon-soo said. Yes, Commander Ko Young-mi agreed, and it terrifies them. The next week, Chairman Bae Dong-min received a formal message from the Confederation Council. It was signed by every major species leader and written in the most polite language possible. But the meaning was clear. They wanted humans to take direct control of galactic government. We have come to understand that humanity possesses wisdom and capabilities far beyond our own, the message read. We formally request that humans accept the position of guardian species and provide direct leadership for all Confederation worlds. Chairman Bae Dong-min read the message 3 times, then set it aside and called his advisors. "They want us to rule them," he said when everyone was assembled. "And?" Director Nam Yun-soo asked. "And we are going to refuse," Chairman Bae Dong-min said. Dr. Sim Won-ho looked relieved. "Good. Direct rule would destroy everything we have accomplished." "Why?" Commander Ko Young-mi asked. "We could guide them more efficiently if we did not have to work in secret. Because the moment we accept direct authority, we stop being their guardians and become their masters," Chairman Bae Dong-min explained. "And masters, no matter how benevolent, eventually corrupt both themselves and those they rule." "So what do we tell them?" Director Nam Yun-soo asked. Chairman Bae Dong-min thought for a long moment. Then he smiled, but it was a sad smile. "We tell them the truth," he said. "We came here to learn if they could rule themselves. The test is ending." The formal response went out the next day. It was short and polite and completely honest. The evacuation began quietly, as everything humans did. One day, the mining station at Kepler 442b was operational. The next day, it was empty, with all equipment carefully cleaned and stored for whoever might find it useful. Final Coordinator Lee. Siwoo watched the last transport ships leave from his office window. At 45, he was young for such an important job, but he had been chosen because someone needed to oversee humanity's departure from the galaxy they had called home for over a century. Colony 7 reports complete evacuation. Captain Park, Ji-hoon said from the communication station. He commanded the final human fleet, the ships that would make sure everyone got out safely. "All residents have been relocated to the deep space stations." "New Seoul?" Lee Si-woo asked. 90% evacuated, Park Ji-hoon replied. "The last transports leave tomorrow." Lee Si-woo nodded. New Seoul had been the largest human settlement, home to over 10 million people. Now it would be an empty city, waiting for someone else to discover it and wonder who had built such beautiful buildings in such a remote place. Dr. Choi Yu-na approached the window, carrying a datapad filled with the final reports. She was the keeper of the human archive, responsible for deciding what knowledge to leave behind and what to take with them into the unknown. "The Confederation is panicking," she said quietly. "They have been sending ships to every human colony, trying to convince people to stay." "Any success?" Lee Si-woo asked. "None," Dr. Choi Yu-na replied. "When humans decide to leave, they leave." This was true, but it was not the whole truth. The real reason no human had chosen to stay was that they all understood what leaving meant. It was not abandonment. It was graduation day for an entire galaxy. "Ambassador Hong Seo-jun is waiting for you," Captain Park Ji-hoon said. "The Confederation Council wants one final meeting." Lee Si-woo sighed. He had been expecting this. The alien leaders were desperate to understand why humans were leaving, and even more desperate to convince them to stay. They did not realize that explaining would only make things worse. The meeting took place on Confederation Central, in the same great hall where humans had first been treated like primitive children over a century ago. But now the roles were reversed. The alien leaders sat in their chairs like children waiting to be told they could not have something they wanted very badly. "Please explain why humanity is abandoning the Confederation," High Counselor Nethys said without introduction. "It's crystal." Body flickered with stressed light patterns that showed deep anxiety. Ambassador Hong Seo-jun stood calmly in the center of the room. At 70 years old, he had spent his entire career working to build bridges between humans and aliens. Now he was here to burn those bridges down. "We are not abandoning you," he said gently. "We are graduating you." "To what?" War Marshal Keth demanded. "A galaxy without guidance? A universe where we must make our own mistakes?" "Yes," Ambassador Hong Seo-jun said simply. "But we are not ready," Prime Calculator Axiom 7 protested. "Our analysis shows a 67% probability of major conflict within 5 years of human departure." 67% is not 100%, Ambassador Hong Seo-jun pointed out. "That means you have a 33% chance of avoiding major conflict entirely." "Those are terrible odds," High Counselor Nethys said. "Those are the odds every species faces when they grow up," Ambassador Hong Seo-jun replied. "Humans faced much worse odds when we first left our homeworld." "But you had no choice," War Marshal Keth said. "We are giving you a choice. Stay and help us build a perfect galaxy. Ambassador Hong Seo-jun was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked a question that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. What happens to your children when they grow up? They become adults, High Counselor Nethys answered, confused by the change of subject. Do they stay in their parents' house forever? No, of course not. They move away and build their own lives. Why? Because that is what children do when they become adults, High Counselor Nethys said slowly. Yes, Ambassador Hong Seo-jun said. That is what children do. The implications of this conversation would be debated by xenopsychologists for generations. But in that moment, in that room, every alien leader understood exactly what Ambassador Hong Seo-jun was saying. Humans had been the adults in the galaxy for over a century. They had protected their children, taught them, and guided them toward becoming better than they were. Now it was time for those children to leave home and build their own lives. What if we are not ready? High Counselor Nethys asked in a small voice. Then you will become ready, Ambassador Hong Seo-jun said. That is how growing up works. What if we fail? Then you will learn from your failure and try again. What if we die? Ambassador Hong Seo-jun's expression became very sad. Then we will have been wrong about you, and we will mourn from wherever we are. But you believe we will succeed, War Marshal Keth said. We have always believed you would succeed, Ambassador Hong Seo-jun replied. That is why we are leaving. Eventually, the evacuation continued for 3 more months. Human settlements across the galaxy emptied systematically, leaving behind infrastructure and technology that would serve other species for centuries. Gardens were left in perfect condition. Libraries remained fully stocked. Factories continued, operating under automated systems. Everything useful was left behind. Everything that made a place uniquely human was taken away. Dr. Choi Yu-na finished her work on the day before the last human ships departed. The human archive was complete, stored in a vault beneath the former human embassy on Confederation Central. Inside were detailed records of every species in the galaxy, their histories, their cultures, their strengths and weaknesses. Also inside were instructions for maintaining galactic stability, scientific research protocols that would advance civilization for millennia, and detailed warnings about threats that might someday emerge from the dark spaces between galaxies. Will they use it? Captain Park Ji-hoon asked as they sealed the vault. Eventually, Dr. Choi Yu-na said, when they are ready to stop feeling abandoned and start feeling free. The final departure took place at midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Lee Si-woo stood on the bridge of the last human ship to leave Confederation space, watching the stars turn into lines of light as they entered Fold space. Destination? Captain Park Ji-hoon asked. The deep black, Lee Si-woo said. Beyond the galactic rim. There are things out there that need investigating. New threats? New questions, Lee Si-woo corrected. Humans have always been good at asking questions. Behind them, the galaxy they had protected for over a century grew small and distant. Ahead of them lay the vast darkness between galaxies, full of mysteries that would keep human explorers busy for millennia. Any regrets? Dr. Choi Yu-na asked as she joined them on the bridge. Lee Si-woo thought about this for a long time. We did good work, he said finally. We kept them safe while they learned to keep themselves safe. We taught them to dream of better futures. We showed them that different species could live together in peace. But, Dr. Choi Yu-na prompted. But, it was always temporary, Lee Si-woo said. We were never supposed to stay forever. We were supposed to help them become the kind of people who did not need help. And did we succeed? Lee Si-woo smiled, and for the first time in months, it was a genuinely happy smile. Ask me in 100 years. The human fleet disappeared into the darkness between galaxies, following paths that would take them to places no other species had ever imagined. Behind them, the Confederation worlds continued their work, their trade, their art, and their science. 4. The first week after humanity's departure, panic spread through the galaxy. Stock markets crashed, governments fell. Wars threatened to break out over trivial disputes. But then something interesting happened. The protocols humans had left behind started working. The economic models proved accurate. The conflict resolution Systems functioned as designed. The scientific research guidelines produced breakthrough discoveries. Most importantly, the aliens started making good decisions on their own. Oh, they made mistakes. The Zalani Collective tried to claim 3-star systems that belonged to the Thraxian Republic, leading to a brief border conflict. Prime Calculator Axiom 7 attempted to upgrade its programming without proper safeguards and accidentally created an artificial intelligence plague that took 6 months to contain. But they learned from their mistakes. They worked together to solve problems. They helped each other when help was needed. They grew up. 100 years later, the galaxy was more peaceful and prosperous than it had ever been under human guidance. Wars were rare and brief. Scientific advancement continued at an accelerated pace. Art and culture flourished across thousands of worlds, and sometimes, on clear nights, when the galaxy's rim was visible against the star field, sentient beings of many species would look out into the darkness and wonder about the ones who had watched over them for so long. Monuments were built to the silent guardians. Universities established programs in human studies. Children of a dozen species learned about the mysterious people who had come from far away, helped build a better galaxy, and then vanished into the deep black when their work was done. Occasionally, deep space sensors picked up strange signals from beyond the galactic rim.